Welcome to ITV.com's full coverage of the second Super Touring race of the weekend. A change in the weather conditions and a delay in the timetable meant that it had to be put to the end of the day, but we're just about ready to go racing. And Tim Harvey, this should be quite a spectacle.
Yeah, I think the guys will be very glad they didn't have to race in the rain, and we're going to see the cars at full speed now in the dry. All systems go.
James Dodd is the man who will start on pole position for this second Super Touring race of the weekend, having won race one. John Cleland lines up alongside him at the rolling start. Simon Garrett and Derek Palmer are on row two. Then it's Graham Dodd, James's father, and Stuart White on the third row of the grid. Patrick Watts will start on row four alongside Neil Smith's Alfa Romeo 156. Then it is Max Goff's BMW and Dave Jarman's Nissan Primera, ahead of Keith Butcher's Nissan and Mark Wright's Ford Escort Mark II. Kingsley Ingram's Mazda comes next, ahead of Steve Dimmock's Super 2000 Alfa. Rick Wood's Honda Accord has the Alfa 155 of Tom Andrew for company. Then it's Darren Fielding's BMW and Tony Absalom's Vauxhall Cavalier on the ninth row of the grid. Behind them, Dan Wheeler and then Mark Jones in his Cavalier. Mark Smith is missing and Nick Whale gives his BMW M3 to son Harry for this second race of the weekend. The cars released onto the warming up lap here at Oulton Park, turning their way through Old Hall, and in fact, by the look of it, there is no Harry Whale at the back of the grid. He is missing, so one or two, I'm afraid, have not made it out for this rescheduled race, put to the end of the day after heavy rain delayed their race earlier on. But the front of the grid, James Dodd, very, very rapid competitor indeed, with the ex-James Thompson Honda Accord, and the redoubtable John Cleland lines up alongside. And Tim Harvey, this is a category that must bring back many memories.
It's completely spooky to see these cars on the grid. I know they're not all of the same year, so it's easy to get slightly confused, but you know, as a historic Super Touring race, it is absolutely fabulous. And you know, there's some wonderful cars in. It's great to see that the crowd have stayed here to watch this, because I'm sure for the crowd it brings back a lot of memories as well. And it's great to have two original drivers. Patrick Watts just gone through your picture there, and of course John Cleland in his own car, which is wonderful.
If you're wondering how the Escort Mark II creeps in, although it's called Super Touring, the class structure really is, perhaps more accurately, for heritage touring cars, and that Escort Mark II and indeed late Group A cars are allowed in under the championship regulations. And Mark Wright's Escort is a very well-driven car, and it's also been drawing a big crowd in the paddock. People still like Mark II Escorts, but these cars that people remember from the Super Touring era, the Hondas, the Renaults, the Nissans that were so successful, and the Alfa Romeo 156 in the background there is a car that never raced in the British Championship but did drive in the European Series. That's an old Stefano Botner chassis that came from the STCC that came to Silverstone in early 2000s. So as the cars work their way towards Druids, it's going to be a rolling start. That wasn't done in period, but it takes some of the pressure off now lifed parts.
Yeah, it takes a lot of strain out of the clutch, the gearbox, the drive shaft, so it's done for those reasons. This is your onboard shot of 61-year-old John Cleland, looking as fresh as the day he drove that car. Yesterday's race, if you don't know, John led the race until he was passed quite a long way in by James Dodd in the Honda, who went on to secure victory from John Cleland and Simon Garrett in the Renault Laguna. We'll see what happens this time.
So the rolling start's almost completed. The safety car, the pace car as it is, will peel into the pit lane, and then we will be ready to go. And the front of the grid is James Dodd in the ex-James Thompson Honda, and John Cleland in the ex-John Cleland Vauxhall, one of the first, indeed the very first, 888 built Vectra, chassis number 001. The second row of the grid, Simon Garrett in the ex-Jean-Christophe Bouillon Renault, and Derek Palmer in one of Laurent Aiello's cars alongside. Everybody aboard the time machine. Out of Deer Leap, the pace car will peel into the pit lane, and the second Super Touring race of the weekend, over 20 minutes, is go. And who makes the best start as they head off down towards Old Hall Corner? It's James Dodd on the inside, John Cleland on the outside. Patrick Watts tries to gain ground in the background, but it's Dodd, Cleland and then Garrett, the top three, as the Nissans attack one another for fourth, and Dave Jarman runs very wide indeed at Old Hall.
I was so tempted to say Matt Neal runs wide there. The car, obviously the car that Matt Neal won.
Oh! Tom Andrew, aka Antonio Tamburini, in the Alfa 155, off at Old Hall and back onto the circuit.
Fortunately, without any damage. We don't want to see any damage to these cars. Cleland looks like he's going after Dodd in this race, certainly pushing hard on cold tyres.
So heading up towards Shell. Patrick Watts is a man on a mission as well. He's lining up to have a go at Neil Smith, who's closing right up onto the back of Graham Dodd there. James's father in one of the many 23 numbered Nissans. They've got a period race number and today's race number. And Neil Smith trying every which way to get past him in the Alfa.
Yeah, Patrick Watts didn't have such a good run yesterday. He had a problem in qualifying with a split oil cooler before the oil filter before qualifying, and didn't get out till late, which meant that the track was actually not at its best. So he had to push through the grid a little bit yesterday, but he looks really up for it. Actually, that's my old car that he's driving there, so be careful with it, Patrick.
And he's under attack as well as we have a look at what happened at Oulton on the first lap. Dave, I think they concertinaed in front of Dave Jarman. He had to jig left, didn't he? But no damage done. Gets back onto the circuit, and that's Alpha on Alpha. Steve Dimmock in the S2000 156 got into the side of Tom Andrew, turned him around. Yeah,
fortunately without disappearing down the grass into the barrier. Yeah. That's good. These are all valuable cars now. The value of these cars is absolutely skyrocketed. Patrick Watts looking down the inside.
Neil Smith defends, coming into Lodge. Graham Dodd is defending from all of them. James Dodd leads the way as they come over the timing line at the end of lap 1. John Cleland second, and then there's a tremendous battle going on here. Look for third place heading into Oulton as Neil Smith dives up the inside alongside Graham Dodd. The Alpha's going to be up the inside. Leads on the Nissan, he's all sideways. Neil Smith goes through, can he hang on to it? He can. Nothing changes then as now. Great racing.
Yeah, well, Neil Smith is an aggressive driver. Yeah. He does like to have a go. He doesn't worry about the value of the cars when it comes to racing, and I dare say Graham Dodd wasn't too impressed with that, but it nearly backfired on Neil Smith. Yeah. He nearly lost it. Didn't go to an ultimate tank slapper. Oh, talking of which, Simon Garrett gets wide. Smith round the outside. He might do this and closes the door. Wow, he's very glad, isn't he? He's a strong driver.
So Neil Smith goes third, and now Patrick Watts looks for a way past Simon Garrett, who's a very successful historic touring car racer, and comes towards Britons with Graham Dodd behind, and he in turn is trying to defend from Stuart White. There he is in the ex-Tom Christensen Honda Accord #1 as they come over Hilltop, then down towards Hislop. So you're looking now at the battle for third place, and this behind for fourth now is Garrett defending off Watts.
And it's so good that the crowd have stayed till the bitter end to watch this race. I think there's a lot of people come to see this race, and it's great they've all stayed to the end to watch it. I'm sure these guys are happy that they're racing in the dry on slicks rather than in that after that torrential downpour we had earlier. So a great decision by Toka to put this race to the end.
And at the moment it is James Dodd leading John Cleland. James is a very successful historic racer, goes well in anything and always goes well around here as Patrick Watts lines up Simon Garrett, dives up the inside. Garrett gives him racing room. Patrick Watts goes through.
Yeah, good move. Now what we want is a safety car, please, to just close them up again, because clearly Neil Smith and Patrick Watts are on a charge, but there's quite a big gap now behind Cleland. It's 5 seconds.
And there, Tom Christensen attacks Anthony Reid going into Oulton. In other words, Stuart White tries to make a move on Graham Dodd, and Lawrence Aiello is buying into this because Derek Palmer in the neck to the Nissans is joining in as well.
Well, we know how difficult Anthony Reid was to pass, you know. It's the cars are not only looking as they did in their day, they're being driven in the style of the driver that drove them, which doesn't say a lot for me when I've got Patrick Watts driving my car, does it?
We'll just leave that there, shall we? But Patrick has gained a place, at least. So his next target is going to be Neil Smith, as there, coming through Shell, the Honda you were looking at, Stuart White's car that Tom Christensen, in fact, won here with in period and won the last Super Touring race at Silverstone, the night race in 2000. And Tom Andrew brings the 155 down the pit lane. It crashed on Friday in testing. It's got more damage on the left-hand side after turn 1. And the 155, the type of car that Gabriele Tarquini won the '94 British Championship with, is in the pit lane. Now, there, Stuart White attacks Simon Garrett, the two Nissans behind trying to go toe-to-toe. Graham Dodd versus Derek Palmer Jr. Great battles just about everywhere.
Yeah, it really is fantastic, and they're really having a go with these cars, and they look quick on the track. They do look fast. I mean, at times they're doing so far, track 146. I mean, the lap record in its day for these cars was with Joe Winkelhock, which was a 141.6 or 146, or 41.9, I think it was, which was actually done in 1994. So they're a little way off that, but of course they don't have the super exotic tyres that we used to run in those days, where there was no control tyre then. We had unlimited tyres, and they were very special and very expensive and very, very grippy as well, I seem to remember.
Now you're looking at Stuart White, who is now up into 5th place, but up front Neil Smith is catching John Cleland. The gap 2nd to 3rd is coming down as the Vectra is being caught by the 156 Alfa Romeo. There is James Dodd, the race leader, the ex-James Thompson car, ahead of John Cleland in the original 888 Vectra, but his sons have done a huge amount of work on it. This is John hard at work.
Yeah, looking composed, loving actually driving this car, loving doing it with his family, and also as a motor dealer, loving that, knowing that his car's going up in value rather than down in value.
And John has done everything as good as he possibly can. He's got the car in the original livery, he's got the backdrop to the garage with all the period Vauxhall Sport logos on it. He's got the clothing as well, he's got the shirts from the period remade as well. Over Hilltop he comes, down then now towards Hislop's. The gap 2.2 seconds last time. James Dodd pulled away a bit, but Neil Smith has just done the best of anybody in the first sector. Looking back from Cleland's car, there is the Alfa Romeo 156 hunting him down.
John even managed to find a whole load of autograph cards, original for the year, which were left over, perhaps not unsurprisingly. So he's still trying to get rid of those.
He comes out of Druids, then down now towards Lodge Corner. And let's have a look at how things stand, because there's the leader, James Dodd. Behind him is John Cleland, then Neil Smith, who is lapping quicker than the Scotsman ahead of him. And Patrick Watts still going strongly in fourth place in the Peugeot. Fifth behind is Stuart White, and Simon Garrod is under attack now from Graham Dodd. Many, many years ago, these two tied on points for a historic touring car title and shared the crown. Derek Palmer is then under attack from Keith Butcher. Nissans everywhere.
Yeah, they all different years, though, and all slightly different histories, similar liveries. And you know, each at their day would have been very expensive cars. Oh, move down the inside there. It's going to move. It's going to work.
Keith Butcher goes through ahead of the car of Derek Palmer. Keith Butcher's a car that David Leslie was a runner-up in 1999 with. As there you can see Simon Garrod up on the inside of Graham Dodd. This is Dodd attacking Garrod, but Simon is defending. Graham Dodd in the ex-Anthony Reid car tries to find a way past the Jean-Christophe Bouillon Renault from 1999, one of Jean-Christophe's two chassis from that year. This from the second part of the year, but Garrod is a very good defensive driver.
Yeah, Graham Dodd was talking to me about yesterday's race, which had a partly damp track up at Druids, and he said, I started with the roll bars soft, and being just an amateur gentleman driver, I forgot to move them to stiff as the track dried out. But he certainly put up a great display yesterday and today.
He calls himself an amateur racer. He does himself a disservice. He was winning championships in the mid-1970s, Graham Dodd, and went away to build up a business and a family, came back with the Historic Sports Car Club a few years ago, and whatever you put him in, whether it's a touring car or a sports car, he goes very, very quickly in it. So he's quite modest as well about his ability.
Yeah, very modest. And well, Stuart White with the fastest lap time. I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but now down to a 45.1, so getting quicker and quicker. So Stuart White at the moment running in fifth place. His next target is Patrick Watts. 11 minutes of the race to go. We're still the right side of half distance as this Nissan fight. Keith Butcher now ahead of Derek Palmer, heads to Druids. There is Stuart White, who is really hacking away at this gap to Patrick Watts. Yeah, he was nearly a second quicker on the last lap. And that's a big chunk of time to take out. He had the fastest lap yesterday as well, so we know how quick he is. So it's Tom Christensen hunting down Tim Harvey at the moment, coming out of Old Hall. No disgrace to be hunted down by a multiple Le Mans winner, is it? Very true. When Tom raced in the BTCC, he had his first Le Mans success, but many of them were still to come, and he was a race winner in the BTCC. He didn't stay in it for more than a year, unfortunately. Now, not only is Stuart White catching Patrick Watts, the pair of them are catching Neil Smith. So this is the fight developing now, third, fourth and fifth. White, like yesterday when he started last after a broken drive shaft in qualifying, is in a big hurry. Yeah, he needs to put his headlights on, because that was obviously the next thing he used to do, to intimidate a rival manufacturer. The problem was in the day that if you drove for one manufacturer, it was almost better to drive into another car than be overtaken, you know, because it was a matter of badge honour, not driver honour. You had to defend the mark. So you'd sort of risk some contact rather than be overtaken. Let's hope that doesn't happen here. So through his locks, Stefano Modena fends off Tim Harvey, who fends off Tom Christensen as they come down through Knickerbrook. Patrick Watts in the middle of this, then trying to attack the Alfa, defend from the Honda as they climb uphill once again. And Neil Smith, who, now that he's having to defend, of course, is losing touch with John Cleland. But Patrick Watts has to be on his toes here, because now Stuart White is right on his tail, diving into Druids, and that Peugeot is going to have to become very wide. Down they come towards Lodge Corner. Now is Stuart White near enough to make a move this time? Of course, Patrick's still rather busy trying to find a way past the Alfa. Stuart White thinks about making a move, can't do it. No, not this time, but they're lining up for something to happen, that's for sure. looked at the inlet noise of the cars, you know, they all have different inlets, but a real guttural sound as they suck air in from the front. Patrick taking a wide line into Old Hall there.
Stuart White had a look, but it didn't pay off for him. And this is Rick Wood in the Honda, the ex-Gabriele Tarquini car, trying to get past Mark Wright, whose Klaus Ludwig recreation escort cuts the curve and understeers its way through his locks. I know it's a bit incongruous, that car, but Mark Wright is another very quick, historic racer, and he gives us a very good account of himself in that car. 1800cc engine. Right, up towards Shell. Smith ahead of Watts, ahead of White. This is third, fourth and fifth as they work their way through the corner. 8.5 minutes are on the clock, and the Alfa Romeo being driven defensively now to keep Patrick Watts at bay.
So they get to the end of their allotted time. There is a curfew here at Oulton Park, which is rigidly enforced, and it's probably going to expire in 9 minutes, so it's going to be very close, isn't it?
Yeah, it might go just one lap less than the original duration, but the fact they've had more than 10 minutes, which was what they were facing at one point, is good as Watts gets it wrong, heading into his locks. He goes across the grass. Did he fall or was he pushed?
Well, I'm glad you said Watts got it wrong, but instead of Harvey got it wrong at least. Yeah, I think he just outbraked himself. You know, all these cars have different engine specs, and certainly Stuart White's Honda will probably have a bit more power than Patrick Watts' car. You know, with every new year, they got more power, quite simply. And obviously these cars are a little bit old, and I think Patrick was just suffering a little bit of loss of power and was trying to make it all up on the brakes.
So period livery, some period drivers, period excuses as well, I noticed.
Oh,
that is Steve Dimmock, I'm afraid, in the ex-Giovanardi 156 that's off at Shell. That, I fear, could be safety car there.
It could be. That's in a dangerous position, without doubt. That car, in fact, he only discovered it was Giovanardi's car this weekend. Here we see, oh, there was contact. Well, that's a shame, that's a shame. He only discovered it was Giovanardi's car this weekend when he got Fabrizio over to have a look at it, and Fabrizio said, well, I had a special pedal box in my car because I was the only one in the team that right foot brakes, so I had a different brake pedal, and he said, yeah, that was my car, so very good news.
Tony Absalom here was the man that got it together with Steve Dimmock. That is a car that in this championship was a Jamie Wall Mid Motorsport and then Richard Kay car. It originally was raced in Japan and in the Paul Ricard Touring Car World Cup in 1995 by Anthony Reid.
Oh, another of Anthony's cars. Okay.
And he's got some damage.
Yes.
Out of Druids come
The inference being, David.
Now look at this battle here, because you have Slim Borgard ahead of Jeff Allen. This is Kingsley Ingram in the 323F Mazda that never raced in period because it was done for a Team Magic that then went bust, and it became the subject of a High Court case. But it was built in period in these colours. Kingsley Ingram, a former rally man, has had it for a number of years in club racing, and Mark Jones, the man from Warrington, is behind in Jeff Allen's 1994 Cavalier, a car that Andrew Jordan drove for a track test here the other day. Right, the leader is still James Dodd. We have got now just under 4 minutes of the race on the clock as they work their way down towards Lodge Corner. And Patrick Watts, having lost that place now to Stuart White, is not able to get back onto terms with the Honda. But Stuart White versus Neil Smith, they had a pretty good battle, except it did end in contact at the Silverstone Classic last year. Yeah,
I was going to say these two have a little bit of previous at Silverstone through Beckett's, I think it was. They had, down the inside, a lunge with Stuart White, and Neil gives him room. Neil gives him room this time, but Neil will fight back, but that was a really good move.
Down towards Cascades now. Neil Smith, as we saw earlier on, never gives up. White locks up. Smith goes deep into the corner. He's going to run wide. Is Patrick Watts close enough to take advantage of this? No, he's not. So Stuart White now up into third place. Can he hang on in there? Can he stay there as they go towards Island Bend?
He was so determined to hold that position, wasn't he? Braked impossibly late for Cascades and just got the back of the car moving a little bit.
Now, while these battles have been going on, so Simon Garrett is still there, 6th, 7th is Graham Dodd, 8th, Keith Butcher, 9th, Dave Jarman, and Dan Wheeler, Mini exponent, regular race winner in Minis these days, is in 10th, having gone off the road yesterday and damaging the splitter, and his Simpson Motorsport engineers went back to Gloucester overnight, made a splitter, and got back to Oulton Park to fit it at 5:30 this morning.
Good for them, and I'll tell you what, Patrick Watts is not done. Look, he's got back onto the tail of Neil Smith,
who locks up, scrabbles into his locks. Isn't it great to see the Alfa Romeo, because it's a car that never was in the BTCC, and it's one that you don't see very often.
Well, it is great to see it, particularly if you're an avid Alfa Romeo fan, David.
indeed, yes. And the fact that it's good for a top 4 finish is even better news. But it's a shame that Neil Smith's been dumped off the podium now. Is this gap coming down a bit between Dodd and Cleland? It was 2.3 seconds last time, but with only a couple of minutes to go, I think James Dodd has got this one in the bag. And as I said earlier, he always excels around Oulton Park in whatever the family fleet of cars provides on the day. He's got 2 of these. He's got this ex-Tomo car. He's got an old Peter Cox chassis as well. Dan's got the Nissan.
Yeah, they've certainly got a good collection
Absolutely.
of these cars, and they've been very resourceful in finding them. And a lot of these cars have been turning up in Eastern Europe, Montenegro and various places, being used for hill climbs and things. And very resourceful. And Johnny Westbrook, who's been a big instrumental force in this championship and puts in a lot of work behind the scenes, has been helping people find cars, prepare them, get them out on the grid, and hats off to him as well for all the effort he's put in to get these cars to grid. I think perhaps without him it would never have happened. Him and Dave Jarman have been the key figures in putting this together. And
both of them can look back on a job well done with such a great grid. And James Dodd can look back on a good weekend, which looks like it's going to bag 2 wins for him. He comes out of Britain's, puts a lap on Jamie Ward, aka Tony Absalom, in the Mint Motorsport car. Mint Motorsport, incidentally, one of the founders of that was Paul Andrew, the dad of Tom Andrew, who we saw in the 155 pitting earlier on. James Dodd through his locks, and John Cleland set for 2nd place. Not something we've had to say for a long, long time, but it's good to have John back racing, and still a massive enthusiast for touring cars. And of course it was this period of the BTCC that really made him.
Yeah, and as much as I hate to say it, in fairness to John, his car is 2 years older than that Honda.
Yeah.
And 2 years at that end of the scale of development of super touring cars is quite a lot. So John doing a fabulous job, really driving well, but his car not quite up to the level that James Dodd's car is. Not take anything away, James Dodd is a brilliant driver, and he comes across to take his 2nd win of the weekend. Excellent.
James Dodd wins at Oulton Park in the 2nd Super Touring race ahead of John Cleland, and then for 3rd place it is Stuart White, but for 4th
Patrick Watts, aka Tim Harvey, has come through and overtaken Nigel Smith in the Alfa Romeo.
Neil Smith's Alfa 156 takes 5th place. Boo. And then for 6th, it is going to be Simon Garrett. There is Dan Wheeler at the back of this little train in the 1997 Anthony Reid Nissan. But Anthony Reid cars everywhere in this race. I think he got through a lot. Coming through Lodge Corner, he's behind Dave Jarman. But Dan, who was winning in minis a week ago, is leading the Mini Amelia Championship at the moment and comes right on the tail of Dave Jarman, now over the line. The gap between them as they came through for 9th and 10th was just a 1/5 of a second.
Excellent, great racing. Well, these guys have put on a fabulous show. I'm sure the crowd have loved it. We certainly loved it. Stuart White set the fastest lap of the race on the last lap. So just shows these guys pushed all the way through.
And this is Rick Wood, the engine builder from Stockport, making his way down towards Lodge Corner. That car with a slight corruption of the period livery, but it's the ex-Gabriele Tarquini chassis. And Rick Wood, who's got a nice collection of cars as well, DTM Opel Astras, for example, comes over the timing line in 12th place, and a change on the last lap because Mark Jones in the ex-Jeff Allen Cavalier has got himself up past Kingsley Ingram, and they are going to end the race nose to tail as well. I think everybody can look back on a weekend where they've all enjoyed themselves, they've had some cracking racing, and they put on a great show. And
the crowd really appreciating that.
James Dodd has yet again underlined that he is a very good driver. John Cleland is in the opinion that he should have a go in the BTCC.
Yeah, no question, no question. Perhaps in a 3rd Honda Tourer.
Now there's a thought. There's a thought. And John waving to everybody. Still a very popular driver. He's, as you made the point, been in demand in the paddock all weekend. And it's good to have him back racing. And still a very popular driver indeed. So John Cleland takes 2nd after a Mercy dash to Coventry yesterday to get some spare parts for the car so he could go racing. And he's repaid the hard work of his sons in doing that work yesterday afternoon to get the car on the grid. 2 second places, and then with that fastest lap, as Tim said on the last lap of the race, Stuart White taking 3rd. So 2 Hondas and a Vectra, Peugeot 4th, Alfa Romeo 5th and Renault 6th, illustrating some of the manufacturers that were involved. I think an Audi A4 is on its way for future races within the Super Touring category, and that would be great because that's another car that had a major part to play in this era of not just the British Touring Car Championship, because Britain led the way. Super Touring became a global success. Round 4 of the Historic Sports Car Club Super Touring Car Championship, won by James Dodd. Then John Cleland in 2nd place and Stuart White in 3rd. 4th, Patrick Watts, Neil Smith 5th, and Simon Garrett takes 6th ahead of Graham Dodd. Keith Butcher 8th, Dave Jarman 9th, and then Dan Wheeler rounds out the top 10. Max Goff 11th ahead of Rick Wood. Mark Jones is 13th from Kingsley Ingram, with Tony Absalom, Mark Wright a lap down. Derek Palmer's Nissan faded. Steve Dimmock was in the gravel. Tom Andrews 155 pitted. Now let's grab some reaction from the pit lane and join Adrian Bourne.
James, second win of the weekend. Tell us about that race.
Fantastic to win both of them. I'm really, really pleased, to be fair. I mean, John was keeping me so honest, and my tyres, to be fair, had gone off. I was thinking, please, if the front tyres had just gone. I thought, please just hold a bit longer. And no, I mean, John was a fantastic. He drove absolutely amazing, so I can't take anything away from him at all. He is brilliant. But to win both the races at the BTC event was great. It's great to be invited here, which is fantastic, and hopefully be invited again one someday.
John, second runners-up position of the weekend. Tell us about that race.
It was good. I mean, I would much have preferred it for us to race when it was pouring with rain. I think that was the only chance I was ever going to get of passing that Honda. It's very, very quick, and James is a really good little pilot. He's done plenty of rolling starts and his historic stuff in the past. He knows what's what. He doesn't make very many mistakes, and if I could have got a little closer to him, I might have helped him into making a mistake, but nah, he drove well. He deserved to win the 2 races.
Stuart, fantastic battle for third place there. Tell us about it.
Well, it all started yesterday. I just snapped dry shaft first lap out in qualifying. I had to start from the back of the grid. In the first race we got up to 6th, which was a really good result, fastest lap. So I knew we had the pace for today, but just got mugged a wee bit at the first corner there and lost a few places, probably about 7th or 8th. But really good race to come through to third. I think we got the fastest lap, so I think if we'd been up there, we'd be on for the win. It was really good. Who says you couldn't overtake in the touring cars, eh? Plenty of overtaking.
And a good battle itself for third place with Neil Smith.
Yeah, it was a good battle. I've had a few battles with him this year actually, but it was a nice clean move pass, so it was really good.
So, a great race. James Dodd taking a 2nd victory of the weekend. It's hard to know where to start, really. Some of the star names, some of the star cars, all some great racing.
Yeah, it was very easy for me to just get completely captivated by watching the cars and swept back into period, but some great racing, and those cars being driven really hard. Great to have the original drivers in a couple of the cars. John Cleland put on a great performance in his 99 Vauxhall, and Patrick Watts came charging through in inimitable style in the Peugeot 406.
1 and 2 hard luck stories, a few cars with damage, and we've lost a few over the weekend with mechanical dramas, but these aren't easy cars to run, so these guys that are doing it really as amateurs do a very good job.
Yeah, it's a great shame we've lost some of the BMWs, because there's some really nice BMWs out there. We lost a couple at Thruxton with engine problems, Jim Whelan's car and Mark Hazel's car, and then we lost Paul Smith's car here, beautiful Castrol CBM car, looking absolutely fantastic. So I hope we get those cars back out to provide some variety. But then, of course, we've had the Renault Lagunas come in, right. You know, more cars all the time, and I dare say there are more cars to be found and brought out of retirement.
And some of what you might call the quirky cars, like the Mazda 323, which never really had a proper spell in the championship. There was Ian Cantwell's car in the early 90s. This one that we've seen racing never raced in period. The Alfa Romeos that certainly the 156s weren't part of the British Championship, but it's a great overview of that era of touring cars. Yeah,
and also it's great to see the development of the series, you know, from the very first 1991 E30 M3 right through to the 2000 Honda Accords. I mean, a fantastic development of a period.
Before we go, a reminder of what's ahead on ITV's motorsport calendar. Highlights of today's action at Oulton Park are on at 2:25 next Saturday on ITV4, or at 9:20 the following day. A late night showing on ITV for you on Wednesday the 18th at 3 AM. Our next live action is rounds 13, 14 and 15 from Croft. That's in 3 weeks' time, Sunday the 29th of June. We have qualifying live online for you on the Saturday, but that's it from us for now. Bye-bye.